everyone, welcome to Pie in 5. This is a video series that gives you a 5-minute tutorial on how to make a pie. You will only need your filling ingredients and your pie crust, so you can buy refrigerated pie crust, freezer pie crust from the grocery store, or you can make your own. I will link to my all butter pie crust recipe at the top of this video. Now today's pie we're going to be making is sour cherry pie. The first thing that we're going to do is make our filling, and you're going to need some red tart cherries from the can. Because tart cherries are typically hard to get fresh, it is pretty normal to use canned cherries for a sour cherry pie. For a regular 9-inch pie, you will need 5 to 6 cups of sour cherries, which is about 3 cans. Go ahead and drain the cherries and reserve the juice. Add some of that juice to a large bowl along with your sugar and tapioca. Now I love using minute tapioca for my pies, but I know that it is sometimes hard to find, so I will list some substitutions in the recipe, which I will link below in the description box. Add in your almond extract and mix well. Pour in your cherries, give that a good stir, and set that aside while you prepare the crusts. Okay, make sure you have your 9-inch pie pan ready, and then prepare your work surface by sprinkling some flour on top. Now if you're using ready-made dough, go ahead and skip to the part where we're lining and filling the pie. If you're using homemade butter dough, just make sure you let it rest on the counter for 5 minutes to soften up. So you just want to flip and roll, turning each time so that it kind of resembles a circular shape, and making sure that you have enough flour on the rolling pin and on the surface so that it doesn't stick. Use your pie pan as a gauge to make sure that you have enough dough to line the bottoms and sides. Now carefully peel the dough off of the counter and place it into the pie pan using a rolling pin. You can also use a bench scraper if your dough is starting to stick to the counter. After you roll the dough into the pan, don't try to stretch it if you can. Just allow the dough to fall into the pan. Make sure that it's flat against the bottom and the sides. Stick the pan in the fridge while you prepare the top. Okay, I'm going to show you how to be super fancy and do a lattice for the top. Start with a large piece of parchment and then trace a circle around another 9-inch pan. Then flip that piece of paper over so you don't get any of the lead on the crust. That is going to be the guide for the top of our pie. So set that aside and then flour your countertop again, and take your second crust that's been cooling on the counter and try to roll it into a rectangular shape. Place your guide on top of the rectangle to make sure that it's big enough and so that you know approximately how long your strips should be. So I'm using a pastry cutter which has this kind of fluted edge to it, but you can just use a paring knife to get straight edges. Then once you cut your strips, move them over to a tray that we can put into the freezer so that the strips are easy to manipulate into the lattice design. So these dough strips have been in the freezer chilling for a little bit. They're a little bit firm but not frozen to the point where I can't bend them. I'm just going to place a few of them on the side, and I can see through the parchment paper the circle that I traced. So I'm going to lay down half of them in one direction. Then I'm going to peel back every other strip and then take one of the strips that I set aside and put that one down on top of the ones that were laying down. Then pull the bent up strips down over the one that I just laid down, and repeat this process except with the opposite strip. So I'm going to peel upwards the strips that were laying down before. Put down another perpendicular pie strip and pull the other ones down, and repeat this process until all of your strips are used up. Tighten or loosen the strips based on your preferences and stick this whole thing into the freezer. Okay, now that we have all of the parts of our pie, let's assemble and bake. So take the bottom crust that's been chilling in the fridge and add all of your cherries to it. Add the butter cubes to the cherry filling. Then grab the top of your pie that's been chilling in the freezer and flip it onto the top of your pie. My aim was not as good that day, but that's exactly why we freeze the top of the pie like that, so we can pull it if we need to and make sure that it's straight. Then use a paring knife to go around the pie to trim off the excess dough, and use your fingers to seal the top of the crust to the bottom. Place the pie on a baking sheet that's been lined with foil, brush with some egg wash, and sprinkle on some coarse sugar. longer. The edge of the pie will cook faster than the inside, so you need to cover it with foil. What I do is use some foil strips, spray it with some non-stick cooking spray, and then apply it to the pie when it's uncooked like this, because it's more difficult to do when the pie is hot later on. Stick your pie in the bottom rack of an oven that's been preheated to 425 degrees. Now if your pie is browning too quickly, go ahead and make it a foil hat to put on top of the pie like I did here. I baked mine for about 1 hour with all of that foil on top of it, removed all of the foil, and stuck the pie back in the oven to brown up a little bit more for about 20 to 25 minutes. An undercooked pie is one of the saddest things, so let me tell you 2 secrets to figure out how your pie is done. The first thing, look at the crust. It should be super toasted and crispy. You might even be able to see the layers on the sides of your pie. The second thing, you see how the filling is bubbling from inside? When you see the bubbling, that means that you've cooked the tapioca to temperature and that your filling is going to be super thick and not runny. Another secret to preventing a runny filling is to just let the pie cool before you cut into it. So I let this pie rest for about 4 hours before serving it. So here it is, the finished sour cherry pie. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. The full recipe will be on my blog, so check it out, tastypastry.kitchen. If you have any suggestions for any pies you want me to make, go ahead and leave me a comment down below and I will give it a shot. Thanks for watching and happy baking.